Hi everyone, Art Burns here. Hope you're all having a great day today. Hope you all had a wonderful weekend too. I hope Monday is treating you well, but more importantly than that, I hope that you are treating you well on Monday. As I talk about here a lot, and this is not the topic of what I want to talk about today, but I feel necessary to just put this in here because self-compassion is one of the most powerful tools that we have to mitigate the troubles that we might feel in our lives, the feeling of failure, the feeling of shortcomings, the feeling of any kind of inadequacy or anything along these lines. If we can be our own ally, right? If we can treat ourselves well, if we can be the source of our own comfort, right, then we become very resilient to all these things, and we become you know, almost impervious to them in a big way and invulnerable to them, right? And so that's why I hope that you are finding time to notice the difficulty that you might be experiencing on this Monday, getting back into work. Maybe a lot of kids are going to school this week. There's probably a lot of uncertainty happening. There's probably a lot of fear that's going on. There's probably a lot of sense of are you doing enough? Are you doing things right? Are you doing things wrong? And in these times, I hope that you're taking the time to just notice the difficulty. And in noticing the difficulty, also remind yourself that you're not alone in this difficulty, right? In fact, every parent in the world right now is experiencing some level of what you're experiencing right now, right? And if you're not a parent and you're just, Monday morning getting back into work, then almost everyone in the world who is, works a 9 to 5 job is feeling the same, somewhere along the same levels of what you're feeling, right? And if you don't work a 9 to 5 job and this is your day off and you feel that kind of weirdness of being on this off schedule where you're off on the day where everybody's going to work, well then understand that everyone who lives in this kind of this kind of alternative schedule is also experiencing similar things to you. And now be kind to yourself, right? Be supportive of yourself, right? Comfort yourself. Be there for you the way that you might be there for someone else. Okay, these are self-compassion practices, and I can teach you how to do them. If basically I just illustrated it, right there. So that's a bonus in this video because again, this is not the topic that I was setting out to talk about today. But if you'd like to talk about this and you'd like to learn about this simple practice, you could do this either very informally while you're sitting at your desk, or you're driving your car, or you're hiding from the kids, or you could do it formally as a meditation. I'm about to give a guided meditation to a Facebook group of parents in a couple hours from now, and so you can do this that way too. It can take about 20 minutes or so to do a meditation. Any way you do it, it's going to be very, very beneficial, and it's a habit and a quality of life that can be enormously beneficial to you in so many ways. Okay, emotional resilience, the ability to just find happiness even in the face of adversity, all kinds of things that go on, right? Including, of course, the reduction of anxiety and depression and stress, right? And so there's my segue because what I really wanted to talk to you today is stress. And I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry, but yeah, I mean, Monday is a very stressful day for most of us. As I said, especially now, right? We're coming off this. We just had Friday was September 11th, which has us all feeling emotionally just very confused and uncertain, and a lot of old memories, and a lot of it stokes a lot of fear that we felt in the past, and now we had this whole weekend, which is also like kind of that Friday feeling that you had absolutely probably colored a lot of what you felt throughout the weekend. And now, of course, it's Monday, and now we got to get back to work. We got to put our kids back in school. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of again, maybe feelings that you haven't been doing what you should have been doing. Maybe you're worried that your kids put on a little weight like we all have during this pandemic, and there might be a lot of fear-based thoughts that are going on, and this is the root of stress, right? Stress is built on fear, right? Basically what stress is, and this is my work, right? My work is all about helping people manage the stress in their bodies, to reduce the stress in their bodies. Well, what that really means, it's not so much, I mean, sure, I could give you lots of techniques to bring your stress levels down, right? Deep belly breathing, certain, physical exercises you can do, certain emotional things that you can do, meditation, going out for some exercise. All these things are great ways to bring the stress down. But what I do is I help people to relate to the stressors in their life so that they don't get the stress to begin with. Okay, and this is a very key distinction. Okay, because stressors are everywhere and they are inevitable in life, but the stress that they cause, that is optional. And so in my work, I'm obviously exposed to a lot of different information about stress. And so essentially what stress is the excitement of your body, right? It's the elevated heart rate, it's the increased blood pressure, it's the hyper arousal of your body, right? Which is caused by fear. And the reason I say that is because there's actually, we usually just use the one word stress, right? But stress is a very complex kind of notion, right? There is actually good stress that happens in our body, right? We tend to, we tend to label stress as, just stress, but what we're referring to when we call it stress is distress, right? Which means that the sort of negative sort of side of stress, the damaging side of stress, right? The stress that is, in fact, based in fear. But there's another end of stress that is based in excitement and passion and just drive, and that's the kind of stress that's good for you. But the difference, and so let me give you an example of that kind of stress, right? Like athletes, right, who gear themselves up for a big race or a big game or whatever. They're in that place of stress, right? They're elevating their blood pressure, their heart rate, their respiratory system. Everything is all very amped up because they need to perform, right? But the thing is that they're not afraid. Right now, for most of us, like people who aren't athletes, picture yourself on a roller coaster, right? You strap yourself into the roller coaster. You're feeling safe, right? You're not afraid, but you're putting your body through this really exciting thing, right? A couple of things that are different, right? Number one, when we're not afraid, we feel in control. Right, so we feel like, okay, this ride in the roller coaster is only going to last for a few minutes, and then I'm going to be done. An athlete knows that, okay, at the end of this game, I can relax, I can have some Gatorade, I can take a shower, I can bring myself back down. Right, distress, when it's caused by fear, is something that we're not in control of, right? We're afraid, right? And so what we're doing is now we're feeding that stress with our fear-based thoughts and emotions, sensations in our body. I talk about this here a lot. So the difference then is, right, whether we're in control or we're out of control. And when we feel out of control, right, the thing that we instinctively want to do as human beings is regain that control, right? Because out of control is scary, right? Out of control is dangerous. Out of control is uncertain, right? We don't know what's going to happen to us when we're not in control of ourselves and our bodies and our life and everything else, right? And so that lack of control, what we're doing is we're desperately, and I mean desperately, trying to regain control. Your body is in a place where it feels out of control. It is going to give you all the resources it can to regain that control, which means either escaping from a threat or fighting a threat or freezing so that the threat doesn't hurt you, right? So that you can hide from it, right? Fight, flight, freeze, right? That's the response of your body in the stress response. Essentially, what stress is, other than just calling it the survival mode of your body, which is very, very accurate to what it really is, but also what you can look at is stress is the physical response to a mental and emotional experience or event, right? That's what stress is. Now, the way we tend to feed the stress, right, which with thoughts and emotions and sensations, right, as I talk about here a lot, that the thoughts we have, the emotions we feel, and the sensations we feel in our body, they work as a cycle, right? You have this thought about, about school. School starting, last night maybe you were trying to go to sleep and you're thinking, oh my gosh, school tomorrow. You know, um, you know, what are, my child put on 10, 15 pounds over the course of the last few months during this quarantine. What are the other parents going to think about me? Right? And now you're in this fear, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be embarrassed. Now you have an emotion of fear, right? Now you have a sensation in your body that goes with that emotion. Now you're going to feel another thought's going to come up, right? Because that sensation is sending that signal to your brain saying something's wrong here. We're worried about something, and your brain's going to say, okay, let me think another thought that's also wrong, so that I prepare my body to survive this thing, right? So now maybe you think like, I told him not to eat all those Oreo cookies, and then now you have this other fear of maybe anger, resentment, another emotion, another thought, another emotion, another thought, sensation, another thought, so on and so forth, right? And to the point where we're just like taking logs and putting them on this fire of our stress and our anxiety, right? Now, again, why do we do this? Right? What is the instinctive drive to do this? Well, the instinctive drive that we have to do this process, to keep feeding that fire of fear, anxiety, stress, is that we feel that somehow, some way, if we can manage to worry enough, right? If we can have enough of these thoughts, that somehow we're going to affect the outcome. We're going to somehow regain control. We're going to somehow, change something that's going to happen so that we'll be safe. Right? That's why we have, again, your body is sending a signal up to your brain, and your brain is like, oh my gosh, something is wrong. Think wrong thoughts. Like, that's what's happening. Because if I worry enough, somehow I'll get to a place of safety. Right? That's how it works, right? So now, when we're in this survival mode, right? I'm going to tie this back into what, parenting, right? Now, and of course, this doesn't just affect parents, right? This affects everyone in the world, right? Especially in the Western world, where we have so many things to worry about. We kind of invent things to worry about. But anyway, when we're in this survival mode, right, what's happening in our bodies, right? Yes, the blood pressure is elevated, the heart rate is elevated as well. The respiratory system is short from the chest. It's like almost like, hyperventilation is like the end of the spectrum, right? We're going towards hyperventilation. We're trying to get oxygen in real quick, so that we can, get out of this thing, right? Or fight it off, or somehow just freeze, right? Like a possum, right? Get ourselves so excited that we just still ourselves and like hide, play dead, right? But in addition to those things, those are the obvious, sort of physical reactions, but there's also things going on inside our brain and inside our whole body, right? So anytime that we're in the stress response, again, we're in survival mode, which means that our bodies are only interested in and only concerned with surviving what we're afraid of right now. Okay, so again, while you're thinking about what might happen tomorrow morning at school, right? Your body is not worried about anything except that, right? And of course, this is something you can't control, right? It's something in the future. It's not here. It's not now. But your body is going to do everything it can to just concern about that thing. And until you start feeling and thinking in terms of I'm safe again, your body's going to keep going. Right? And so what are the other things that are going to happen? Physically, your body is also going to shut down your digestive system, your lymphatic system, your immune system, your reproductive system, any system that you have that's not, absolutely integral to your survival right now, it's shut down, right? And in the brain, some really, really important things happen. And this is where it's going to come back to parenting in just a second. In your brain, when you are in the survival mode of the stress response, in distress, right? The stress that is caused by a fear, right? What happens is there's a couple of really, really important things that that are really helpful to understand, okay? Number one, your memory, shut down, Okay, in fact, there's been plenty of studies of people with brain scans showing that people under elevated levels of stress, their hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that's responsible for creating new memories and for recalling old memories, right, which is obviously a very important part of the learning, right, is shrunken. It's literally atrophies. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller the more stress that you have. Okay, in addition to that, right, what we're doing is when we're in the stress response that again is motivated by fear, right, fear exists on the emotional part of your brain. Now your brain has literally three different levels from top to bottom. There's also two separate levels from right to left, but there's three different regions from top to bottom, okay, or from bottom to top. So going from the bottom to top, the bottom is going to be your brain stem, which is just the stuff that's involved with your heart rate, your heartbeat, your blinking, your breathing, your all those automatic parts of your body, right? The things that you have no control over. Okay, that's motivated by your brain stem, right? Which is just an extension of your spinal column, right? That's the reptilian brain, right? That has no emotions whatsoever. It is just function. Right? Then on top of that, you have what's called the limbic area of your brain, right? Which is the emotional part of your brain, right? And that's where all of your emotions live, right? Including that hippocampus, that's in the limbic area of your brain. Also including the amygdala, which is the fear center of your brain. Like those are very important parts of your brain, and they are in that limbic area. But all of your emotion happens in that area. Right? And then on top of that, you have the neocortex, which is the thinking part, the executive part of your brain, right? And so what happens is when you are being driven by fear, right? And remember, it's a bodily sensation that comes up into your brain, right? It's what we call a bottom up activity. Right, and in fact, Dr. Dan Siegel says that when we're in this place of emotional overwhelm, what we've done is literally we've flipped our lid. He says the lid being that executive functioning of your brain just gives way to the emotions. Right, your emotions are just coming up, and you cannot control them with thoughts. Right, so therefore your thoughts are at the mercy of your emotions. Right, so that when you're feeling this fear, you're just thinking about things that you're afraid of. Right, and so you're just constantly, feeding this process, right? That's how it works physically in your brain, okay? So now when you're going through that, right, now I know you may remember that I've talked about something called limbic or empathic resonance, right? What this means is that as we are going through something in our bodies, those people around us, specifically those people who are very attuned to us, like our children, they're picking up on what we're feeling. Right? They can sense it. Even if we're hiding it really well, right? Even if we're smiling through it, even if we're keeping ourselves, outwardly calm, we're like trying to maintain this sort of level of calmness and ease in our mannerisms and stuff, right? The kids can still feel it, right? And what happens then, right, is that the children then feel afraid, right? And when the children feel afraid, the same thing happens to them that is happening to you, right? And they have this sense that if they can just, worry enough, and it's not something that consciously happens, it's just, again, it's part of your emotional, brain just taking over the thinking brain. So therefore, the thinking brain just literally gets hijacked, right? And so the thinking brain literally just thinks thoughts that the emotional brain is making it think, right? Which means that the more I can worry about this, the more I might be able to change it. Right now, two really, really dangerous things are happening right now with your children, right? Number one, obviously this is maybe three things, right? Number one, your child, that's not good for your child, right? It's not good for his or her body, right? The blood pressure, the heart rate, the throwing off of all these systems, it's not good for them. Right, they're literally not going to live well in this place, right? They're not developing properly. They're not living in a place of health and sustenance, right, and harmony, right? Number two, right, they're going to be in this survival mode, right, which means on top of the actual you know, on top of the fact that they're not healthy in this place, what they're not going to do is they're not going to learn. And sorry, what I was going to say is on top of the brain development, they're also not going to learn, right? And what children are meant to do in the first like 10 years of their life is just learn about life, right? But as they're feeling this fear-based stress that's coming from your fear-based stress, what they're doing is they're just learning about what's fearful about life, what's scary about life, what is dangerous about life. And of course, this is setting their tone and their programming that they're going to be with for the rest of their lives, right? And so, and then the last and maybe most important thing that kind of ties into the last point is that they're building this habit, right? This becomes the natural inclination of their mind, right? This becomes a way that they process everything that happens to them through this prism of fear and trauma, right? Because that's what it is. It's trauma for kids, right? So here's where we have this sense that as adults, as parents, we're trying to, worry away these problems, right? We're trying to do something. We're trying to, affect some outcome through our, stress response. And what we're doing is we're actually confirming and conditioning the children to actually live with this stress and the negative effects of it, the dangerous, damaging effects of it for the rest of their lives. So in fact, what we're doing is through this worrying and through this attempt to worry away whatever this problem is, we're actually affirming this problem. We're cementing the problem into the children. So in other words, what I'm trying to say in very short is that it's working against us. The very notion that we have for feeling stress in the first place is actually creating the problems that we're trying to avoid. So why do I tell you this? Because stress is controllable. It is avoidable. And it is very, very simple. Remember, it comes from, and you can really look at it, that it starts with a thought. Right now, it doesn't always start with a thought. If you see something, that's not really a thought. That's a reaction, right? But generally speaking, most of the time, our stress starts with a thought of something. Right, and even if you see something, then the next thing is a thought, right? Like you see an email pop up from a credit card statement, right? And you're, oh gosh, I bought that thing last month. How am I going to pay for it? Now you have a thought about money. Now you have an emotion about fear, and that same cycle happens, right? So the idea is then, right? How do we stop thinking about the outcomes? Right? And this is the key. And this is the solution to ending this cycle of stress between the parent and the child. It's simply to pay attention not on the outcome of a given situation, but on the present moments. Right? And this goes back to the self-compassion that I talked about in the beginning here, right? That if this is what happened to you last night, like it happened to me, is that, you think about, oh my gosh, my kids put on like 15 pounds. Their clothes don't really fit. I haven't been able to go to the store to buy new clothes, and they don't really, it's terrible. What are the other parents going to think of me, right? Now I'm thinking about the outcome. Right? And that's going to start that cycle, right? So instead, when I feel myself thinking about that, I can instead come back into my body and I can think like, okay, I can take a couple of deep breaths and I can notice what's happening right now in my body. And now I can start thinking about the fact that, you know what, there's nothing I can do about it. Right? I can't go back in time and I can't take the Oreo cookies away from them. I can't make them less bored so they wanted to eat more. I can't make them do exercise a month ago, 2 months ago. There's nothing I can do about it. Right? And in all, and again, getting back to that self-compassion, I can notice that, yeah, this is a difficult time that I've been through. Right? And now I can feel that, you know what, in all likelihood, we're going to show up to that school tomorrow. And yeah, there might be a couple of kids whose parents, seem to have it all together and they got them exercise and didn't let them overeat and stuff like that. But I'm not the only one. right? I'm certainly not going to be the only parent of children who put on a few pounds, right? I know that, right? Logically, I know that. And now I can say, it's okay. It's been really hard on you. It's been really hard on you. And give yourself some ease and some forgiveness and some support through this, right? So this is how it works, folks, and it's that simple. It really is that simple. Just little tricks that we can do in the moments where we start to feel the stress and we recognize it. Now, that's the other thing. I was talking about somebody earlier. I used to have very high blood pressure that was caused by stress. I mean, I used to live a very, very stressful life, and I had chronic high blood pressure, like bad. And so I have now a little cuff, a little portable blood pressure heart rate cuff that I measure from time to time just to make sure I'm still good. At this point, with the mindfulness practices that I've done and the amount of measuring that I've done, I now have an awareness to the point where I can tell you at any given moment where my blood pressure is going to be. Like within a few points. Seriously. Right? And like right now, I know it's going to be high. It's not high because of fear. It's high because of excitement. So I know when I put that cuff on after this call, if I do, it's probably going to be around like 132 or 3 right now, based on the way I feel right now. But the thing is that because it's not a fear-based, elevation, arousal that's happening, within a few minutes of finishing this call, it'll go back down to 120, 115, somewhere around there. And so that's fine, right? But I can also tell like when I'm having one of those days, right? And it's like one thing after another, after another, after another. I can feel like, okay, I'm going to be like close to 140 here. And when I put it on, I'm right there. And then it takes a long time to come down. Right. Of course, now for me, it's not because I have a practice to do to bring it down. But if I don't do that practice, then yeah, it's going to stay up there for maybe hours, sometimes days. Right? And that's where it gets dangerous because my body doesn't want to do that, right? And again, the more I'm in that place, the more I'm feeding the fire. So anyway, I think we've covered all that. It's a very long video at this point. So I appreciate you watching. I appreciate you listening. I hope you got some benefit out of this. And if you want any information about these techniques and these simple practices you could do, please just get in touch with me. They're so easy. I would be happy to share them with you. All right, everybody. Thanks again. Wishing you well. Take care.